My name is John Passfield, and I'm going to read from my novel in a moment. The title of this video is Ospringe Video 1, Gertude Walks to Faversham. Here's the cover of the novel. Ospringe, A Visit with Granddad, a novel by John Passfield. I'll show the photo again in a moment after I read the summary on the back cover of the novel. On a Saturday morning in May 1920, two of the Davies children, 8-year-old Gertrude Violet Davies, who is my mother, and his 13-year-old brother, Claude Laverne Davies, who was my uncle, leave their home at the Mill House on Water Lane in Ospringe, Kent, and walk to 2 Middle Row in the nearby market town of Faversham, where their granddad, my great-granddad, Henry Kennett, lives. After polishing the fireman's buttons, the three of them go for a walk, during which they share their cheerful chatter and think their private thoughts. Now, since there is a photo here, I don't think you need to worry about seeing it in detail, although it's pretty clear, I think. The characters in this novel, as I'll repeat in a moment, are all actual people. Were originally. They're fictional characters now. On your left, standing, is Henry Kennett. He's one of the characters who gets every third chapter in the novel, and you hear his thoughts. On the other side standing is his oldest daughter, who also lives at 2 Middle Row in Faversham. Now, all of those on the lower level are related, of course. So if we start on the left with the little girl, that's my mother. Now, she's probably about 5 years old there. They didn't take as many photos in the old days, so this is the closest I could get to the time at which I set the novel, 1920. So a 5-year-old there, perhaps, but an 8-year-old in the novel. She gets every third chapter, and we overhear her thoughts. Seated is her father, Walter Davies, who happens to be my grandfather, a Royal Marine. During the novel, he's away on the ships. Then the three boys are her brothers, and the lady seated on what I guess is your right is her mother. So three of these people rotate chapters, every third chapter. The man standing on the left, Henry Kennett, the granddad of the title, the little girl on the left, Gertrude, and the boy, the tallest boy who has glasses on, who is Claude. So all of them are mentioned in the novel. Three of them have chapters, and we overhear their thoughts. So let's move on then. We'll get to the text in a moment. This is a novel, excuse me, a little itch there, about my family. It's about my ancestral family, as all of the actual people who are characters in the novel are now dead. The time at which the story is happening is 1920, which, as I'm reading this in 2021, is almost exactly 100 years ago. Though I didn't choose the date for that reason. I chose that date because it was on the eve of a decision to split the family, as it was in Ospringe and Faversham in the county of Kent in England, and for some members of the family to emigrate to Canada, where I was born and have lived all my life, and for some of the members of that family to stay in England. In this video, I'll read from the first chapter of the novel, which presents the thoughts of my 8-year-old mother, Gertrude Davies, on the way to visit her granddad, Henry Kennett, for the day. So, let's move right into the text of the novel. The heading is Chapter 1, Gertrude Violet Davies 1, Saturday, May 1st, 1920, from Ospringe to Faversham. So, a journey novel, a quest novel, if you like. Waiting at the corner of Water Lane, standing beside the Maison Dieu, looking in the window every once in a while, watching the traffic go by on the Roman road, some horses and wagons, but no motor cars, waiting for my brother Claude. He's working at the vicarage. He told me to meet him here. He said not to cross the road. He'll come running down the footpath in a minute or two. He always runs whenever he goes to work or comes home. Mom tells him that if he would get up earlier in the morning, he wouldn't have to run everywhere he goes. Well, it's interesting that my mom called it the Roman road. When I asked my Uncle Claude, her brother, He said, oh, well, if you were facing London, you called it the London Road. And if you were facing Canterbury, you called it the Canterbury Road. So it ran from London through Ospringe, this little crossroads, through Canterbury and down to Dover. A main road, of course. The road of Chaucer's pilgrims, eh? Not paved and so on, not a road maybe, but a path in those days. It's morning, Saturday. There's no school today. We're going to walk to Faversham and see our granddad. Me and my brother Claude Laverne Davies. It's Saturday and we're going to go and help our granddad polish the buttons on the uniforms. Well, that's explained later. Ospringe means the spring, where the water comes from. The Romans called it that. They meant the water that runs along our road, Water Lane. They used to march through it all the time in the olden days. Our dad is in the Marines. He always marches when we see him on parade. I like to go into Faversham and walk through the market. People talk to each other as they shop. They talk about things that I've never heard of before. Mum said that Dad was born in London. His mom came from Scotland, and his dad came from Wales. They had a lot of brothers and sisters. He was one of the younger ones. The brother who lives in East Ham is Uncle Arthur. Another brother of Dad's lives in Canada. Their mom died when our dad was very little. He was only 2 years old. Well, the word Canada kind of weaves through the whole novel. And then images of Canada. We think in images, and the decision as to whether part of the family should go to Canada or not go to Canada is really going to be based on images about Canada, right? So I'll just leave that and let it weave its way through. Walking along the road from Faversham to Faversham with Claude, her brother. Mom and Sid and Harry went to Maidstone today. Mom wants to do some shopping and see the doctor. I don't know if it's for Sid or for Harry. One time when Dad was at the naval base, we couldn't go to see him because Harry was sick. We had to stay home until Harry got better. Then when he got better, we couldn't go see Dad because his ship was already gone. It sailed away onto the ocean before we could visit. Well, I did family research, and there's a postcard that explains how they wouldn't be able to go see Dad at the Chatham Naval Yard on brief leave because Harry was sick and so on. Things like that. Also things my mother told me, but I'll explain more of that later. I was born in 1911, October the 4th. I came in a hurry because my mother fell down the stairs. They didn't think I would live. If you aren't baptized, you can't go to heaven. So the vicar came over to our house and had a private baptism right in the house. This was to make sure that I would go to heaven. At school, Miss Johnson told us the story of Nurse Edith Cavell. Last year, the whole school walked from Ospringe to Faversham to see her funeral train go by on the way to London. Miss Johnson told us to wear our Sunday best because we were going to witness history being made. Water Lane's a lovely stream. It comes from a farm further up above our road. Up the road there is our church, and there is a farm. The church is called St. Peter and St. Paul. That's as far as we ever go. We never dream of ever going past the church. There's a bend in the road, and everything past that bend is a land of far away. So in the mind, we think on many levels at once. So her mind is moving up and down its levels and thinking of different topics. When we speak, we tend to stick to one topic at a time. We kind of simplify our thoughts. We skim off one layer and let that be the conversation. The out loud conversation, but the conversation that takes place in the mind ranges up and down, and many topics, Canada being one, as I mentioned, the Maison Dieu, the House of God on the corner, Chaucer's Pilgrims, Granddad in Faversham at 2 Middle Row, Dad out on the ships, being a Royal Marine. All these topics are going on at the same time, so that's what I'm capturing here. It seems to bounce around, but that's how the mind works, I believe. Walking by the sheep enclosure with Claude. This is where people put the lost sheep who've gotten separated from the flocks that are driven to market in Faversham. If anyone finds a bleeding lamb, they just put him in the pen and close the gate, and the farmer will come back looking for his lost sheep and find it waiting in the pen. Today, all the lambs are with their mothers. There isn't any lambs in the pen. Well, that's information. Does it become significant imagery for a little girl whose family might split up in a few years when her dad gets out of the Navy as a Royal Marine and might not be able to find work in Faversham and might take the family to Canada where he grew up as a Bernardo boy, young boy on the farms? Or does it just remain imagery, information? Oh, if a lamb gets separated from its mother, it's put in a pen, they get back together, and it's happy ever after. So we take in information. Some of it in our minds becomes significant imagery. Some of it in our minds is merely information or remains that way. And so again, does that lamb being separated and then brought back resonate with her as an 8-year-old? I don't know. Granddad's home is at 2 Middle Row. All the firemen keep their uniforms and all their belongings there. Granddad lives in the apartments above the hall. Aunt Lena lives there too. She's the little girl in the photograph with Mom. They lived somewhere else in Faversham when they were little girls. Aunt Lena has a Bible. It belonged to our grandmother when she was a little girl. Inside it says, quote, Faversham District National Schools presented by the committee to Melina Ellen, April 1870, for general proficiency and uniform good conduct. Mall, Preston next Faversham, end of quote. I wonder how old our grandma was in 1870. I'll have to ask my mom when her mom was born. In Canada, Dad says they have a beach where they go to swim on the weekends. It has miles of golden sand and fishing tugs in the harbor and an ice cream parlor where you can buy an ice cream cone on a hot summer day. Dad says that the family he lived with always took the kids to the beach on Saturday afternoons. Well, it's factual information. Is Dad doing a little selling of the idea of going to Canada? When you get to the Henry Kennett chapters, the man who might lose his grandchildren if they go to Canada, I had fun with this. Like his imagery of Canada isn't quite as sunny and positive as the imagery that's being presented by the dad, Walter Davies. So it's my great grandfather thinking of kind of negative imagery of Canada. Why would you want to go there, for heaven's sake? Snow, polar bears, caught on an ice floe above Niagara Falls, my grandchildren, for heaven's sakes. And then Walter Davies, who did grow up there as a Bernardo boy who was sent to Canada and was well treated, his imagery of Canada. So we think in imagery. It's all maybe factual information, but we select information when we turn it into imagery, operative imagery, imagery on which we make decisions. It's really quite fascinating how imagery works in our minds. Walking to Faversham to see Granddad. I always liked to go to 2 Middle Row and help Granddad polish the buttons on the firemen's uniforms. Claude says he likes to polish the buttons too. He likes it better than helping the vicar to scrub the pots and pans and get ready for church on Sunday. Says he would rather be a fireman than a person who works at church. Claude goes to school where I go to school, but on Saturdays he works for the vicar at the church or at the vicar's house. I love our house in Ospringe. Mom loves it too. We both do. We call it the mill house. Well, it says the mill house on the Tyndall house next door. The watermill miller and his family used to live in the Tyndall's house, and the windmill miller and his family used to live in our house. There was a big windmill beside our house that was torn down before we moved in. We play in the foundation of the old mill. Our house is a 2-story. We have a basement and then a first floor and then an upstairs. I don't know whether we have an attic. I've never been in the attic. I don't know what is above the ceiling in their rooms. So this is information. A family lived in that house. It was the windmill house, and they don't live there anymore. And the windmill, which used to stand beside the house, is now just a foundation where the Davies kids who live in that house now play. Well, the idea of changing times and a family being there and then the family, for whatever reason, not being there, would that resonate with an 8-year-old as significant imagery, or is it just information? Fascinating to think about. Our mom makes extra money picking hops. All the village women do, and some of the men. Claude picks hops too, and Sid helps. Harry and I don't help too much. This is her brothers. Everybody says that I'm too delicate. Mom says that Harry is just too young. They don't expect me to do too much, as everyone says I'm just a little thing. Everyone remarks how white I am. Last time Dad was home on leave, he talked about moving to Canada. Excuse me for just a minute. When he was a boy, he was sent to Canada to work on a farm. Mom says that he was well treated because he wrote the family a letter, and they wrote back and said that he could bring us out and live with them while Dad and Claude work on nearby farms. Dad's brother William still lives in Canada. Walking with Claude along the road to Faversham. Usually, Mum comes into Faversham with us and brings everybody along. Then we all have a visit with Granddad while Mum goes around to the shops and buys whatever she needs to cook the dinner with. Sometimes we go to visit Aunt Trida as well. Dad doesn't come with us because he's mostly away on the ships. He's been all over the world, but he always comes back to Chatham, and when he gets his leave, he comes and lives with us at our house in Ospringe for a while. Maybe someday Dad will live with us all the time and come with us into Faversham when we shop of a Saturday. So maybe the family will split up, maybe it won't. Not a big concern for an 8-year-old. If she's 8 years old, which she is, and he doesn't get out of the Marines, her father, till 1923, that's a long ways away. And it's an adult decision, so it probably doesn't resonate with her that there's a major question hanging over the heads of the whole family. But it's in her mind at some level as information. Granddad was born on a farm near Graveney. That's Henry Kennett, the granddad. He has 6 brothers and I don't know how many sisters. When he was 12, his father made him a little wooden trunk to keep his belongings in when he went out to work on another farm. Miss Johnson told us the story of Nurse Edith Cavell. Now here's the teacher's voice. Nurse Edith Cavell, boys and girls, was born in Norfolk, which some people say rivals Kent as one of the most beautiful counties of England. When she was young, her life was school, church, family, and the social round. As she reached her maturity, she became an English governess. Still later in her life, when duty called to her, she left England to go to a foreign country, with all of the trials and tribulations that one would expect when having to adapt to foreign ways. One might well suppose that when duty called to her, she would rather have stayed here in the beautiful greenery of England, which sadly she was forced to leave behind. End of teacher's voice. I like going to church on Sundays. People gather in the churchyard and talk. I like Jesus loves me, Jesus wants me for a sunbeam, and morning has broken. During the war, First World War, this is 1920, I was really scared all the time. There was a whole bunch of air raids, and they had a big aircraft gun in the park behind our house. It shot right over our house all the time. Well, my mother told me this big gun would boom over top, and I think they shot a dirigible down, and it landed in the field near their house. Claude and I walking through Faversham, holding Claude's hand as we walk along. It's really crowded on the pavement, horses neighing, people talking, a baby crying, bicycles and horses and motor cars in the streets. It's a lot more busy than Ospringe of a Saturday morning. Men are unloading barrels and opening crates. All kinds of people are selling things. Fruit, vegetables, clothing, toys, tobacco, shoes. Mom likes to shop here whenever we walk into town. She looks quite carefully at everything she buys. The other day, the teacher told us about our village. Again, voice of the teacher. Ospringe, children, is situated in the county of Kent, which is often called the Garden of England. It is on the London-Dover Road, near Canterbury. It is only 1 street long, and as you know, that street is Water Lane. The water springs from beyond the church and flows down to where the Roman soldiers and Chaucer's pilgrims used to stop for the night as they went about the business of their lives. Then it flows across the street and into the watercress beds. End of teacher's voice. And then this Canada word with some images keeps coming back, but it's in a level of the mind, even of an 8-year-old, because it's a family topic these days. If we lived in Canada, we wouldn't be able to live at the mill house with all the Tyndall kids next door. I wonder if Mom would be able to take all our cups and saucers and plates and things and put them on another shelf in another house. Mom loves our house, with the fruit trees outside and a pantry where she puts up fruit for storage in the autumn. We wouldn't be able to sit by the fire on Dad's rugs and toast bread on a fork and dip it in the fat and talk about our day and when Dad's going to come home again from the ship. I don't know what it would be like to live in a house in Canada. So you have imagery of where you do live, England, Kent County, Ospringe, the village, the mill house. Do you have imagery of Canada to compare when you're making, not her, 8-year-old making this decision, but when you're thinking about the decision that your parents might make? You have a lot of imagery on one side of the decision. What do you have on the other side? What would it be like to live in Canada? We always buy our bread at the corner of our road, Water Lane and the Roman Road. The bakery is an old building called the Maison Dieu. The Pilgrims used to stay here when they went to Canterbury. Maison Dieu means the house of God. The baker told our mom that upstairs the floor is all tilted this way and that. All the wood on the floor is really old. And then the last passage of this chapter, walking through Faversham marketplace with Claude, her brother. Faversham is always busy on a Saturday. Preston Street, West Street, Market Street, East Street, Court Street. There are so many people in the marketplace. The Guildhall, the Ship Inn, Barclays Bank, the entrance to Middle Row, the front door of 2 Middle Row where Granddad lives. I like coming here. Used to be a police station, but now it's the place where the firemen's uniforms are kept. Its address is 2 Middle Row, Faversham. Granddad lives here with Aunt Lena. Aunt Lena is our mother's sister. Mom says that they're very close when they were little girls. Their mother died a long time ago. Grandma's name is in the Bible that Granddad has on the shelf. Aunt Lena always shows it to us when we visit. The door is open, so Granddad will be waiting inside. So that's the end of the text of chapter 1, where she reaches Faversham with her brother. Now chapter 2, which I'll read in another video, is her brother Claude, his thoughts as he goes with his sister, of course, my mom, from Ospringe to Faversham. And then chapter 3 will be Granddad's thoughts. He's inside 2 Middle Row. He's polishing the firemen's uniforms, waiting for his grandchildren to arrive. So, and then 3 more chapters, they're all polishing buttons, but each thinking separately. The point there of the novel is that we all share the same information in our lives, right? We're all 3 polishing firemen's buttons. We're all 3 in a family that might split, with some going to Canada and some staying here, but we all think separately. So that's why I set it up so you have 3 chapters of pretty well the same thing happening. Kids walking to Faversham, grandpa waiting, grandpa waiting. But you have separate thoughts, say, on all of these issues. Okay, now I make notes as I write novels, and you can access those notes for free, but I'll tell you how in a minute. First, let me read a note of reflection on this novel. So in this video reading, we have my 8-year-old mother, Gertude Davies, and her older brother, Claude Davies, leaving their home at the mill house in the village of Ospringe and walking to the nearby market town of Faversham to spend the day polishing the buttons on the firemen's uniforms and walking with their grandfather, Henry Kennett, to his ancestral home on a farm near the nearby village of Graveney. The plot is simple, but the themes are complex. Number 1, it's the story of my own family at a pivotal time in their lives, when what might have been 1,000 or more year journey in that landscape for that family might come, for some of them, to an end, and a new saga begun in a new land and in a new culture, with perhaps another 1,000 years stretching out in front of them. Well, I'm sitting here in my house in Canada, so that's what happened. That's in the after novel. The novel ends in 1920 with a decision still to be made in the future, to be made in 1923, in fact. So it's been 100 years. Okay, this was 1923, or will be when they make this decision. So my family now has been in Canada 100 years. Will my family be in Canada 1,000 years, living on this landscape? Were they in England for 1,000 years, or did they come over with William the Conqueror or whatever? Or did they come over as Vikings? Like, who knows? In a way, DNA can help sort this out. I guess it traces back. Fascinating to think that that can be done. I have a little bit of Viking blood, apparently. I have some northwest France, which would be Norman blood and so on. Rumor in my family we had Persian blood. Uh, but nevertheless, you just think the family was there perhaps 1,000 years, 2,000 years. Some of them maybe walked with Chaucer as pilgrims. I don't know. And now, of course, you start in Canada, a new landscape. Okay, another 1,000 years. Fascinating to think of that. The continuity of families and then the breaking of the continuity and the fresh start. Okay, that's one. Here's two. In an even larger perspective, is about the role of imagery in the decision-making process for every person or family or group of people, and the way in which we turn information into imagery in order to be able to make those decisions. So it's about individuals, small groups, large groups, whole countries even making decisions. Do we go to war or not? That kind of thing. We still process imagery. So what have I left out here? In addition, we can say that all families live through stories, narratives, sagas. This is a story of all people who live everyday lives in communities all over the world. It's a story of all families who make a decision, for or against, as to whether to leave their ancestral homeland and seek a new life in another land. So I got out of order that. But my particular family, all families at all times, going back to the Ice Age and whether to leave one landmass and go to another, and then all groups, religions, uh, countries, minority groups, what to do about this pending uh, potential divide in our history and in our future, what decision to make. Well, we all think in imagery when we do that. All serious literature explores the role of imagery in our lives, the ways in which imagery both illuminates and distorts our perceptions as we think our way through our lives. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up. The novel, once again, I'll just hold it up, is Ospringe, A Visit with Granddad, a novel by John Passfield. That's available on Amazon. If you'd like information about it, if you'd like free information about it, there's two books. I always write a planning notebook, the idea, the research, which was all family research here, but also, research about England and Faversham and so on. So research, the planning, the structuring, the writing. Okay, that becomes a notebook. Go to johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca. Click on notebooks. Go down to the icon of this cover and you'll get a free book pop up on your screen to read. Then as I'm polishing it, I take a month, 6 weeks to try to make the wording better. I write a journal of reflection on all kinds of topics. Maybe I even mentioned the Ice Age and groups of people deciding whether to cross a land bridge. I can't remember, but everything that such a topic raises as a question, I reflect on. I'm no expert, but I do a lot of thinking. So go to johnpassfield.ca, go to journals at the top, click on that. There's another free book that'll pop up on your screen. So if you're interested, have a look. Also in there, how I came to, which I'll mention in some of these other videos, but how I came to write the novel, like where I got the information from, and how I recorded it and how I worked with it. So all there. So lastly, I'll just say thank you for watching this video.